everybody order just random stuff from the internet in hopes that it'll get here in time for Christmas? Or is that just me? It's another mini PC. This is from Beelink. I've never heard of Beelink, but this is an i5-1240P in this tiny Lilliputian package. I love these small form factor machines. Oh! And this one's got 2.5 gig Ethernet. Comes with 16 gigs of memory and a 500 gig drive. Let's take a look. Don't worry, no Optane in this video because 12th and 13th generation is not compatible with the Optane Accelerator Intel RST driver. It should be, but it's not. So what do you get in the box? In the box, you get your user manual. Warning, during the system boot process, you cannot log into your personal account. Please turn off Wi-Fi and LAN, select the skip option, and then log into your personal account in the system. Please use the power adapter that comes with this product. Please do not plug the power adapter into the USB Type-C port, as this may cause damage to the product and prevent it from working properly. Please do not block the air inlet and outlet. Please peel this off before opening. You see, Microsoft, do you see what? Oh, it's a forced online account. That is the dumbest idea ever. Give people it's like, I'm online. No, you're not. Press delete to enter BIOS setup and F7 to enter boot options. I love that they put that on the bottom here. So this thing feels pretty cool. It's got a breathable mesh on top. It's like this weird cloth. I don't know, Beelink SEi. At the front, we've got 2 USB Type A ports, a Type C port, a combination headphone microphone port, and our power button, which does have a satisfying click. At the rear, we've got 2 HDMI, 2 more USB, and a 2.5 gigabit LAN, as well as our standard barrel jack DC input. With a very tiny HDMI cable, these are bundled so that you can mount this on the back of a display that has a mounting option. It's pretty cool. Then we've got our power brick power cable, mounting screws, whether you choose to use the wall mount option or the VESA option, and our power brick. Our power brick is a Hunt Key, 19 volts, 6.32 amps, 120 watts. 120 watts. Let's see what we're working with inside. So inside, we have a tiny, tiny little fan and a 2.5 inch SATA slot. So you could use a 2.5 inch SSD in here. Now, in case you're wondering, will my 9 or 12 millimeter SSD work? The answer is no. It's not gonna line up. Your 4 terabyte Samsung, however, will fit perfectly well. I'm very slightly worried though that it's basically sitting on the fan when you do that. There are some ridges here to give it some clearance if you do elect to use a 2.5 inch drive, but I can't help but think that that's going to impede the airflow at least a bit. If we dig in under that, we find that the 2.5 inch drive mounting mechanism actually doubles as a heatsink for your M.2. The fan that's part of the 2.5 inch drive tray is removable and does have a relatively standard small form factor fan connector. So I feel like you could probably get a replacement fan for this. And fortunately, this fan is not the only fan in this system. Then with that removed, you can get at your M.2 and your memory. So 4 screws for the bottom plus another 5 in order to remove your mounting solution. Now, strictly speaking, you probably don't have to remove the screws that are holding the 2.5 inch drive in, but I think that would be my preference rather than stress that little ribbon cable that's used to connect the 2.5 inch drive connector. And that's pretty much it for user serviceable parts. There is another fan in the top, so it uses the top as an intake, and the warm air exhausts out the back. Installed is 1.1 volt Crucial DDR5 4800, which is, that's what this platform uses, so that's entirely expected. And there's not really any other surprises in the teardown or the rest of the build here. Actually, I kind of have to hand it to Beelink. I mean, this is one of the first small form factor machines that I've seen that includes the extra fan for cooling your 2.5 inch SSD, because there are 2.5 inch drives that run a lot hotter than others. Most modern 2.5 inch drives don't really produce a lot of heat. So for like this Samsung Cuvo 4 terabyte, this is a 4-level cell. This thing doesn't really run super hot. This is probably enough airflow without this fan that this particular SSD would be fine. But there are other SSDs that will run hotter, and I wouldn't describe them as high performance. SATA is not a high performance interface. They're just using older NAND chips or maybe an older controller. A lot of the time the controller is what's responsible for the heat there. A SATA device can potentially consume a lot more watts than an M.2, so it's something they have to be a little careful with. You could also, I suppose, theoretically put a high performance M.2 in there, and then this fan will also help cool the high-performance M.2 SSD. That might actually be a concern in some of these small form factor machines. Let's get this button backed up and run some benchmarks. Now remember the advice of Beelink when you're plugging this in. Don't connect the network. I'm actually going to give them points for that. That's wise advice and cuts down on the amount of support because of Microsoft's bad decisions. So, more points for Beelink. Good job. I can definitely feel airflow through the front, even though the kilowatt is only showing 20 to 40 watts as we do the Windows setup. It's definitely going to be a dust magnet if you're in a dusty environment. It's really clever that it's a cloth filter on top of that. That's actually really good because it's more of a pain to clean the dust out from inside it than cleaning it from a filter. So having the integrated dust filter is another really clever design choice from Beelink, I think. But it's going to immediately show as well. It's kind of a psychological thing too, don't you think? Because if you can see it and it's not mounted behind your monitor and you think, okay, there's some dust there, I should probably dust it. You'll dust it more often and then your computer will breathe better, and then that's kind of a win-win, right? 1605 single core performance. I mean, this computer is also inexpensive when you look at the pricing. This is a really good score for what this is. And the multi-core score, 89 something. This is right in line with what we expect from the i5-1240P. So there's nothing inherently wrong or thermal throttling or anything like that with this little guy. Now the iGPU, it's Intel Iris Xe graphics, so it's nothing really to write home about. It is enough to do Steam in-home streaming, but I think this machine is more business oriented than maybe game or even light gaming oriented. Although don't get me wrong, you can do some light gaming on it. In terms of living room form factor, this thing is shockingly silent. Even when I had it running at 83 watts for a basically continuous period of time, the fan was barely audible. Also, I've been showing a lot of these machines, and some people don't understand how the VESA mount works, so let me show you that real quick. So I've got this set up on the table right here, as you can see. But like our Pixio monitor, it's got the VESA mount in the back, but then it's got its own stand, which is not, using the VESA holes. And so what you can do, you get the bracket, and you just mount the bracket there and then screw the machine into it, and then we use the short HDMI cable. Let me show you. Now I'm going to unplug this ridiculously long HDMI cable and use the included short HDMI cable. And there we go. And now everything is all anchored to the monitor, as you can see there. And everything still works fabulously. And that's it. That's what the VESA mount does. Now, I mounted it sideways. That's just so it'll exhaust heat out to the side. I could mount it the other way. Could mount it on the other side, but then it'll block my display port. You got some options. If you've got a monitor that's got a built-in USB hub, then that helps a lot because we've only got 4 Type A ports here, and in this admittedly kind of dumb configuration, I'm using 2 high-speed USB ports for the keyboard and the mouse, which is kind of a waste. I've still got 2 Type A and my Type C port, but it would be nice maybe to have some more USB ports, even if they were slower. This thing fortunately does have Bluetooth, so if you want to use wireless peripherals, you totally can. And if you get something fancy like the Logitech setup, that's only going to be a single receiver for both your keyboard and mouse. So it's only going to take up 1 USB port. Now under the hood, there are a couple of unique features in this system. One is it's overclockable. Well, okay. Out of the box, it'll use 83 watts for a limited period of time, and then the standard PL1 and PL2 kick in. So this is a 35 watt part. This platform, the cooling platform, the thermal platform, can actually dissipate considerably more than 35 watts over a longer haul. So you could theoretically overclock this. The out-of-the-box performance is not really overclocked. It's just very slightly pushing the envelope for the 1205P, which is not atypical for the other systems that we've seen based on this processor. But the unlocks in the BIOS these are pretty unique. So you could really dial this in if you want to. Just remember that your power brick that you're working with is only 120 watts, and the entire rest of the system probably isn't designed for a significant overclock. But pushing at 5 or 10 watts, you probably could do that. And you probably could push the PL2 value from 35 watts to say 45 watts and enjoy maybe a little bit better multi-core performance. It's not really going to help your single core performance all that much, at least from the limited testing that I did with Geekbench. Another really cool thing with this BIOS is that you can boot from the network. You can't always do that, or sometimes it's kind of bugged, but it does actually work with this platform. So if you're thinking about something like this for your home lab or a standby system, or you want to do net boot with this because of business class reasons, you can. You can have a diskless workstation as long as your network is fast enough, and the i225V 2.5 gigabit NIC is really sort of welcome there if you are going to run disklessly, because that's going to be about 250 megabytes per second, or almost as fast as SEi12. It's pretty cool stuff that the BIOS is this unlocked. Gives you way more options even than the Intel stock BIOS on their, on the Intel default NUC. So there it is. That's a quick look at the Beelink mini PC, the i5 version. There's a couple of different versions, more memory, less memory, more storage, less storage. This is a perfect machine for your mom or your grandma or a relative or somebody that's not super into computers. Honestly, if they're on something older, like a first gen Core i5 or a Core i7, you're rocking a 2600K. It's like, oh, I'm still using my i7 2600K. You're out there. This would be better. I like this trend of more and more computers for less and less money. Even though at the really high end, things like, the 4090 is getting crazy expensive, it's making all this other stuff less expensive. I'm one of this level 1. I'm signing out for now. You can find me in the level 1 forums if you have any other questions or anything that I didn't cover, or you want me to try anything. Yeah, I did install Pop! OS on this. It was basically uneventful. The 1240P seems to be pretty well supported on Linux with modern kernels these days. I didn't try other distros, older distros like Debian, because sometimes the kernel can be a little bit fiddly, especially when we've got the mixed P core and E cores. You really want to be running Linux kernel 6 or later for that. DDR5, if I were going to do something kind of serious with this, I probably want more than 16 gigabytes of RAM. Fortunately, Beelink can hook you up with that. 32 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of RAM is possible in this platform. 1, 2, 4 terabyte hard drives, no problem. Add a 4 terabyte SATA hard drive, and then use your NVMe for, high speed storage, because NVMe is a lot faster than SATA. You got options. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I should go now.